Hello and welcome along to the Serious About Rugby League show. I'm Will Jackson. Joining me is Peter Smith of the Yorkshire Evening Post, and we've got Sam Cook and Sam Brocksom of Serious About Rugby League. I'm happy to say that we've reached grand final week now. Hull KR will be taking on Wigan Warriors at Old Trafford on Saturday night. It's been a long old season, but these are Super League's two best teams, you'd think. Replay of last year's event as well. It's going to be an absolute cracker. Just before we look ahead to that game, we'll just look back at the weekend's action then. So starting with Wigan, we've got Wigan Warriors 18, Leigh Leopards 6 at the Brick Community Stadium. Leigh were on top for the first half of that game, but an error from Bailey Hodgson sort of provided the first chance for Bevan French to score, and Edwin Apape's needless penalty, provided a platform to get a second just before half time. And from there, it was a bit of a defensive masterclass in the second half, wasn't it, Sam Cook?
Yeah, I think Wigan were just dominant in that second half defensively. The Leigh troubled them, but not really. And the thing is, Wigan hadn't actually troubled Leigh that much. They just kind of got opened up on a couple of little just errors. I think there's a stat around that. Is it about one play of the ball in the 20 in the first half Wigan had, and they scored 14 points. And I think that's probably why they're a team who win grand finals, they win trophies. They don't have to be in the game, but when a moment presents itself, they just switch on and they execute it. And I think that's what makes them so dangerous. I mean, they weren't at their best, but it's because Leigh prevented them from being at their best. Yet they still found ways to score points and then defended brilliantly. So I think there's a real task for Hull KR next week if they're to get revenge for last year.
Yeah, personally, just the way they defended in that second half has slowed the ruck speed down completely. Obviously, Leigh are dependent on that ruck speed to get really anything going at all. Pete, that Jai Field, he's not a bad player, is he?
Yeah, you'd say probably the second best fullback in the competition after Lockie Miller. Seriously, no. I mean, when Field, who I would imagine will probably get Man of Steel now with Wigan reaching the grand final. When Field and French are in the team, Wigan are just too good. They're the best team in the comp by far, in my opinion. I know they finished second to Hull KR, but they had a long spell without French and they weren't as dominant. But when those two are together, it's going to take a very, very good team to beat them. And I think they'll have too much on the day for Hull KR. I'd imagine it will be pretty similar to the Leigh game. I can see Wigan sort of absorbing a lot of pressure and countering and taking their chances when they come. Should be an interesting contest, but Wigan have just looked at a different class over the last few weeks of the season and during the playoffs, and it's hard to see them getting beaten, I think, particularly at Old Trafford, which is their stage.
Yeah, how big was that? I mean, that tackle on Owen Trout as well towards the end of the game there.
Well, it's just that's them, isn't it? I mean, that they don't give an inch. They never stop. They're relentless, and they've got big plays in them, both defensively and on attack, and it's big plays that win matches. They're just a really good side when it comes to games, big games, playoffs, and cup games generally. Obviously, they had a poor Challenge Cup this year, crashing out to Hull, but yeah, they're a quality side and a champion side, and they showed those attributes against Leigh, I think, who've had a fantastic season. I don't think Leigh have got anything to reproach themselves about, not on the field anyway. To finish third and to get to that stage was a fantastic achievement for them at this very early stage in their Super League development. But they came up against an extremely good side, and I don't think there are too many teams over the Super League era who would beat Wigan in the current form. I think they're that good.
Yeah, Sam B, just a word on Leigh. Obviously, incremental improvements now since they've come up into the Super League. Will they be better for the experience of losing another semi-final at Wigan?
Yeah, look, they've had obviously the Challenge Cup win in 2023, and they've had that big moments, but they are still very new to being in finals and things like that. So I think just getting that big match experience, especially against Wigan, who will probably go on to win it, will stand them in good stead. Like I say, they keep improving, and if they do continue on that trajectory, who knows? Maybe next year is their time for a grand final.
Yeah, so Saturday it was Hull KR 20, St Helens 12. All the pre-match talk was about Hull KR being tired, gassed, worn out after a long old season of dominating, but they showed absolutely no signs of that in the first half. I mean, 2 tries, 2 controversial tries, possibly forward passes, but Sam C, Rovers were just too good on Saturday, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they really got into the grind straight away. I think almost similar to what Leigh did against Wakefield in the first round of the playoffs. They just choked St Helens, and I think the fact that St Helens don't have that kicking game to sort of regain territory as well just fed into that for KR. I'm not sure. There was long periods where you weren't even looking to that side of the field. It was all concentrated, and it did remind me of the intensity of Hull KR of sort of mid-season when they were just absolutely monstering teams. And I think Willie Peters obviously mentioned, or he's kind of reacted to questions about tiredness. He's kind of shut them down. He's accepted that his team's been tired and needed the break, but also sort of said, well, look, just watch us. And I think that performance, particularly in the first half, 12-0, like you said, the tries were maybe a bit iffy, but 12-0 didn't reflect the dominance. They could have had more. And I think second half it just maybe got a little bit nervy, but I think overall it's a performance that they'll be very pleased with to take into a game against Wigan. Whereas I think recent performances that have been not happy with whatsoever.
Yeah, just say St Helens asked questions in the second half. I got 2 tries in a row, and Dion Crossan and Harry Robertson late on. Do you think almost that's a perfect way to go into the grand final, having weathered that St Helens storm a little bit?
Yeah, I think they just know that they're gonna they know they're gonna have to execute the chances like Wigan did, and I think it comes down to that more than I think they'll back the defence. I think it's just can they score points against that Wigan team? That's the question, because defensively they've been one of the best in the competition, and they are quite relentless with that, and it is very structured. But Wigan don't necessarily play with structure; they'll play a bit off the cuff, and they will just punish you in moments. And it's whether Hull KR can avoid being punished, and then also find a way to punish Wigan, which is a lot harder said than done.
Yeah, Pete, how do we reflect on St Helens season, how that's come to an end?
Well, they're going to be disappointed, aren't they, with fifth and not reaching a major final because they have high standards. I think, considering all the injuries they've had and the disruption, I don't think they've had a bad season at all. They qualified for the playoffs. They got to a semi-final, and they created the moment of the season with the win at Leeds in the elimination playoff. I think they've obviously got issues. No one thinks that Paul Wellens is going to be coach next season. There are question marks over his team selection, particularly in the halves. But most teams would settle for a season like that, wouldn't they? But I suppose when you're a club that is used to winning trophies, it's a disappointment if you don't do that. I think Paul Wellens is coming for some undeserved criticism. Really, I think he's done better than people give him credit for. Really, I think he's a better coach than people give him credit for. But I don't think it will be enough to keep him in a job. Unfortunately, I think if you're going to coach St Helens, you have to win trophies, and obviously he's not done that. So I would expect them to have a different coach next season.
Yeah, as you say, he has had a lot of criticism, and he has come under scrutiny a lot this season, and probably sometimes rightly so. Sometimes it was hard done. He was hard done by, but I know in St Helens the expectations are very high, and as you say, he hasn't won a trophy, and that is the expectation. But externally, was the expectation of St Helens to be in the grand final this year? I probably don't think so. I probably think he's just about hit par in terms of expectations externally. From my point of view, I didn't see St Helens reaching a grand final. Sam, is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think last year, you look at where they finished. They finished 6th, didn't they? I think, and they limped into those playoffs, and really were a concern. And you look at what the recruitment was this season: signed Saylor, Felt, and Lewis Murphy. So they've not added anything to the pack, which is one of their strengths. But you need to build on strengths. You can't just leave it stagnant. And then obviously signed Saylor as a 6. I'm not sure who's responsible for that. I don't think it's solely Paul Wellens. Obviously, there's a lot of other elements in that recruitment, but they've signed him as a 6, knowing they've got Jack Wellesby. It's not worked. They've had to move that around. Kyle Felt, whilst he scored a lot of tries, a lot of them have come against some of the lower league teams. I think he's been fine, but I don't think that they're going for the NRL to get like a real big player. He's probably actually helped a lot in the development of players like Harry Robertson. So he's probably had a bigger impact there than he has on the field. And then Lewis Murphy's just had a torrid year of injuries, but they probably signed him knowing that he was an injury risk. So I think it's per recruitment more than anything. I think Paul Wellens has kind of, like you say, got par with what he's been given. And I think if you're to expect them to finish any higher, I mean, realistically, no one thought they were going to finish higher than Wigan or Hull KR. Leeds obviously were a project. Leigh, kind of like we said, they're increasing a little bit. So you probably did expect them to finish in between that 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And as it happened, they were close to 3rd. They could have, a couple of results later on in the season's gone against them. But I think it's probably as expected. And I don't think Paul Wellens really can be held that accountable. I think Leigh is being brought in as the attack coach, and the attack's not fired yet. It's Paul Wellens who seems to cop the flak for that, which obviously, yeah, he is the head coach. He makes the calls, but it's not all on Paul Wellens, and it just seems to be that he's the scapegoat. And I'm not sure why. When you look at what he has done, he's made they were dead and gone after the loss to Leeds in Magic Weekend. Everyone had completely wrote them off, and I think in the final 10 games of the season they won 7 or 8. Like, they carried that form in. They've won one of the games of the season, and they've not been battered by Hull KR either. Like, they were asking questions of him. It's just a couple of in the middle of that second half, they just made a couple of sort of consecutive errors, and that's not on Paul Wellens. That's just players making errors. I don't know how this whole season plays out, and he can be the scapegoat, but I think, like you say, the expectations of St Helens are that they win trophies, and having not won trophies since his first game in charge in the World Club Challenge, it looks like it could be the end.
Yeah, I think you're right to point to recruitment as well, and it's a key period now. Obviously, if the reports are correct and Paul Wellens is going, they need a new head coach, obviously, but also a handful of players have announced 2 already, I think. But they need so much more. Obviously, James Bell's going, Joe Batchelor's going, Morgan Knowles is going, John Bennison's going, 2 or 3 others as well. That's going to be massive, isn't it, Samby?
Yeah, I think it is a key period here for St Helens. They need to get this year of recruitment right. They've signed Jacob Host, I'm presuming, to fill the prop. I'm presuming he's a prop, so I'm presuming he's replacing someone like James Bell in that role. But yeah, I think Morgan Knowles going is the key factor here. They need someone that level of quality to replace him, especially with the other forwards going as well. We don't know what Curtis Sirenen's doing, Matt Whitley's doing, players like that. I think
as well.
Paul Wellens, we've said it all already, haven't we? Sorry, my mind's gone blank. The forward pack will be a huge transition next year. They just need to get that bit of recruitment right.
Yeah, and do you think there's a bit of pressure now as well in terms of they've left it late, haven't they? In terms of making a decision, getting a new head coach in. Do you think they should have been wrapped up months ago?
I think
Yeah, I
most of
think
them know.
Paul Wellens' interview on Sky said everything, didn't it? The fact that he refused to comment on whether he had a future, which implies that he hasn't. If they were sticking with him, you'd have liked to thought that they'd have announced it, earlier in the season, just to take that pressure off him more than anything. But yeah.
Go on, Sam.
No, I think they must have known this months ago. I think they just didn't back him in the market, and then obviously the results have not gone the way they've gone. And I think their mind was made up probably mid-season. Paul Wellens has been asked in press conference plenty of times, and he's kind of said that he's comfortable and that the discussions will take place when they're going to take place. And it almost feels that that's code for the discussions were never going to take place. Like, I think he's probably known. And I think what needs to be said about Paul Wellens is that every single time he spoke to the media or just conduct himself, it's always with like the utmost dignity. I think he's one of, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when they beat Leigh, like he's one of the good guys in rugby league. And even his post-match presser on Saturday, I think he was asked about the future, and he kind of says, look, it's not, I think he said, I'm comfortable or whatever. It's not about me. We've got 5 or 6 players who are leaving, and the important part is now that those players get a few days with their teammates to kind of sign off. And I think that's probably shows what sort of bloke he is. He doesn't like live for the limelight. I think he just is. He's been hard done by, really. But yeah, I think in terms of what's next, they must have been looking behind the scenes for a new coach, and if they haven't, then it just screams of more issues at the top, which is again where I think the recruitment issues come from anyway.
Yeah, just moving on and talking about the championship grand final yesterday. Pete, you were there for us. Tell us what happened.
It was from a York point of view, a very disappointing day. I think most people would probably have fancied York to win, but they were beaten by Toulouse 10-8. York actually scored both the tries in the game. You don't see that very often, do you? They scored 2 tries, both converted, but Toulouse came with a game plan and they stuck to it. They took the 2 points whenever they got an opportunity, and York gave them too many opportunities. 5 penalty goals kicked by Jake Shorrocks, and that was just enough to see Toulouse home. It wins them. Obviously, they're the champions now, and probably more importantly, 0.25, which doesn't sound very much, does it? But a quarter of an IMG point, which might well swing it for them to get in the top 12 on the club rankings, and an automatic place in Super League next year. You'd say that they deserve it as champions. They've had a fantastic season. They finished only 2 points behind York on the league table, so they've been right up there all year. They've got a young, exciting squad who Sylvain Hules said after the match he thinks they're a lot better prepared now for Super League than they were when they were promoted 3 years ago. It's just a case of, is the competition going to accept 2 French teams in there? I think it'd be great for the sport if Toulouse were promoted. As for York, I still think York have done enough to earn a Super League place. They've come a long way in 10 years. They don't announce the attendances, unfortunately, but there were about 5,000 there yesterday, as far as we can tell. 10 years ago, York were playing out the Heworth Amateur Club in front of a few hundred. They've come a long way. They won 20 games before the grand final defeat, 20 games in a row. They finished top of the table, 1895 Cup winners, and they've got some big plans for recruitment. York is a rugby league city. I think it would enhance Super League. It's a good stadium. It's not the biggest. It's 8,000 capacity, but there's a tremendous atmosphere. This isn't a dig at any other club, but the atmosphere was far better than at some Super League clubs, like, for example, Huddersfield, who are in a big stadium and getting 4,000 or 5,000 people rattling around in it. It's not a good atmosphere, but it was at York yesterday. They're heading in the right direction. I think they've earned the right to have a crack at the top flight. But unfortunately for them, on the day when it it really mattered in terms of performance. They just weren't good enough. Too many errors, too many penalties given away, and Toulouse deserved the win on the day.
Yeah, Sam C, like what Pete said there, Toulouse seemingly just earning their spot in Super League now, especially with the 0.25. But they're going to be really hard to ignore, are they? It seems to be Toulouse and two others, maybe York, one of them, and between Bradford and London, maybe for the last spot.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, there's lots of reasons behind the move to 14, but one of them was the genuine fear among some of the club owners that Toulouse would come up on IMG naturally. I don't think that certain club owners wanted a sixth of the central funding going to France, where they believe that they don't get anything back, etc. Which, I mean, that's a claim to discuss for another day. But I think that's one of the reasons why 14 was approved, so that the percentage-wise money not as much was going to France. I think they were 13th last year. Salford are going to lose points. Toulouse are going to gain points. It's unless someone behind makes a big leap, Toulouse look to be in the 12. And then, you've got effectively a 3-horse race between York, Bradford and London. But London are only being considered, obviously, because of Gary Hetherington and then the Australian involvement. They finished 10th, I think, on the Championship. The squad at the moment, if you look at it, it's nowhere near Super League. They've said that they're going to be bringing in some NRL names, etc. But they've got a lot to do. And I think that's kind of where this whole process is a little bit, I don't want to use the word shady, but it's because it's behind closed doors in terms of the independent panel, and you're looking at the sustainability, the finances, and projections. Projections are kind of a little bit hard to really nail down. There's not really there's obviously numbers behind it, but it's kind of like, we will do this, we will do that, and you kind of taking promises. Obviously, those promises you say are more reliable now you've got the Australian backing, but what you can't put a London team up that are going to have the squad comparable to what they have now. They need 10, 15 players. And I mean, Jordan Williams, one of their props, is going to Wakefield. Like, I'm sure they'll have other players picked away as well. So I think that their challenge is proving that. And then obviously Bradford's challenge is just the stadium, isn't it? Like, you can't have that in Super League, but it seems like that potentially is going to be the way. So, yeah, I think Toulouse probably, the win in that, it makes it really, really hard to deny them. And if you do deny them, it probably, I think Sylvan Hills said it's now or never. Like, what more can they do? So, and he's right. If they get ignored now, then it looks like there's an agenda there. But I think it is hard to pick one of the 4 teams to not be in there. So it's all eyes on next week, really, isn't it? So, but I'd guess that it's going to be Toulouse, probably York, and then it's a coin flip between Bradford and London.
Yeah, we'll find out Thursday, 16th of October, that decision gets announced. Something that did get announced today was the Australia squad. 24 players, Sambi. Any surprises there?
Yeah, I think the surprise is the amount of backs that are in the team. They've got 8 backs and only 10 forwards, which is a bit strange. And they've also gone with 5 if you include Ethan Strange, 5 halves. But I do think Strange will be playing in the centres to cover Staggs and Shibasaki. But yeah, I mean, it's a star-studded squad. Anyone that they were going to pick was going to be, one of the game's best down under. Yeah, I think it'll be a really exciting series. Nathan Cleary will be the key man with Reece Walsh, who obviously had a great grand final the other day. I think Wembley will be a great first test for England. They've got England will have to. It'll be the strongest test win Sean Wayne's had in his England career. Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. Let's bring on the grand final then. So on to Saturday's showpiece event. Look, Rovers have been in big games before. They've won the Challenge Cup. They've won the League Leaders' Shield. They know they can beat Wigan now, having done so in August. Sam C, how big is that?
It's massive, and I think I've mentioned privately to you recently. I think part of the reason for that sort of lull from rounds 23 through 27 was almost the fact that they'd beaten Wigan in round 22. That was building up to that was so big, and I think the come down after it was kind of hit them hard. They don't have to worry about
the same since, have they?
No, but they don't have to worry about any come down after this. This is it. So I think they can take confidence in the fact that the most recent meeting is one that they won. And then also, I think Willie Peters has said they're going to do a lot of things different from last year, that they've learnt lessons. There's been a big selection hint that it could be Oliver Gildat rather than Jack Broadbent. I think he's referenced him as a left centre specialist, whereas obviously Broadbent's more versatile. So I think there's been lessons learned, and whilst obviously Wigan will still be learning, and Wigan are still Wigan, Hull KR, they had the best season possible, really, to give themselves like the confidence to do this. So I think, obviously, I mean, they'll probably be in and around again next year, but this feels like a big opportunity for them, because losing back-to-back grand finals to the same team is going to be devastating if it happens. So I think they kind of have to. I don't think they can use that as the motivation. I think Peters has spoke a lot about if you're using revenge as a motivation, then you're too focused on your opponents and what they're doing as opposed to what you're doing. And I think that's been like a big principle this year: focus on yourself and you're on high standards. And we kind of saw a return of that on Saturday night against St Helens. And I think if they carry that forward, maybe get a bit of luck, Wigan maybe just aren't quite as perfect as they were Friday, then I think Hull KR are well in it.
Yeah, just on those changes. So one of them was Hull KR snubbed the walkthrough last season the day before the game. They will be going to Old Trafford on Friday. I mean, they're going tomorrow as well as part of the media event, but they'll be going on Friday as well for a training session on the pitch. Another one, I think Willie thought that they were a bit too touristy last season, a few too many selfies being taken. I think he wants to see that change as well this year. Peters has got a bit of a selection dilemma. Mickey McIlaurin wasn't fit this week. Probably will be fit in inverted commas to play this week. I mean, does he come in? Does Jack Broadbent go out? Personally, I don't think you need Mickey McIlaurin in there. I think Rober's astute enough and sound enough, confident enough to play without that experience. But Pete, do you play Mickey McIlaurin if you're Willie Peters this week, knowing that he's only half fit?
I don't think so. On the one hand, it's all or nothing, isn't it? So you might say, well, we'll take a risk, but then again, it's a cup final, and playing players who aren't fit in cup finals rarely works. We all know one big example of that in 2005, Keith Senior at in the Challenge Cup final for Leeds against Hull. I think you play your players who are fit, and I wouldn't pick him. No, not unless he's 100%. I know he's sort of a bit of a talisman, is he, in a way, experienced player, and coming at the end of his career, it'd be tough to leave him out. But no, I wouldn't pick him. Yeah,
there's a room for sentimentality in a game like this. You know, as you say, it's the end of his career. If he plays, it will be the last game of his career. Is there room for any of that sort of sentimentality, Sambi?
I don't actually think it's sentimentality. I mean, they brought in Mickey Mack and they brought in Jared Warrior-Hargreaves for that big game experience, and then to not play him in these big games, does that not kind of defeat the point? But I think Mickey Mack, I think he will play. I think just having a back on the bench in a grand final is a bit ludicrous, especially when these type of games are more forward dominated. I think you just need that extra middle that'll do the defensive work for you. And I think Mickey Mack will be more determined than ever to play in that game and to win, because obviously it is his last game. He's won 2 Super League titles already. He'll want a third.
Sam B thinks he comes in. Who's the man that drops out then? And it also means that Jez Litton, the Rovers Player of the Year, best hooker in the league this year, is in the dream team. means that he'll be getting 20, 30 minutes less on the pitch.
Yeah, I actually think it's the right way to go. I think if he's above 75%, I think it's the play. 'Cause I think you're only using Mickey Mack for 20 minutes. I think that's it. He's asked to go do 20 more minutes of his career. That's it. And I think it's worth it for him to set the tone. I probably agree that it's Broadbent or that the bench. I think would be, if McIlroy starts, would be Litton, Whitbread, Luckley, and then you're probably looking at Reece Martin or Batchelor, whichever second row doesn't start. And I think it's probably that's the way I'd go. I look back to I can't remember. It was the early game, which it was the Hull Chaos first loss when they lost to Wigan at home, and it's the game when McIlroy gets injured. And for the opening, Wigan actually took the lead, but they only took the lead after McIlroy goes down with his injury, and then Zach Eckersley basically pinches the ball and exposes the fact that McIlroy comes across the sideline. They have the scrum set, and Wigan see that, shift the ball to that right, where McIlroy's effectively defending on the wing, and he obviously gets skinned by Zach Eckersley. But the first 20 minutes of that, even though the score was 0-0, Hull KR were well on top, and McIlroy was a big reason for it. You then get, obviously, Litton coming on fresh at 20-minute mark, which potentially is when Wigan might change their hooker as well. I think that's a lift when Litton comes on, because like you said, he's been the best hooker in the competition. So bringing him on, with Mickey Mack having played that final stint of his career, I think you get the lift there as well. You also get the big game experience. And another point to note as well is if Jared Warrior-Hargreaves gets a ban, we don't know if he will, but if he does, then Mickey McIlroy in that front row, there's your experience. These Hull KR players are experienced enough, but he's one of the genuine winners in that team. So I'd probably be saying you start him regardless, but if JWH is banned, then I think his case strengthens even more. And I think it probably is Broadbent who's the unlucky man, because Peters said he wants that specialist left centre, and if a centre does get injured, he's proved that he's really happy to play James Batchelor there as well. So I think that's the way that they'll go. But again, there's obviously fitness tests to be considered, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, just on JWH, I think I could probably say it's nearly midday as we're recording this, and we're still waiting for the match review panel to get any sort of I just got an email then. Actually, I thought it was them. We're still waiting for the match review panel to get back to us this afternoon on that, because it wasn't a penalty in the game, but John Benison he failed the head injury assessment, didn't he? Okay. Well, Wigan looking to win their third grand final in a row. Pete, I asked the same sort of question about Rovers, but that experience, they just know how to play at this time of year, don't they? They know how to play at Old Trafford. They've been there and done it. It's big for them.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, I just think if we're going to not win it one year, then they won't lose. I don't think they'll lose it at Old Trafford. I think they'll lose it in one of the games leading up to that. I think they've just got too much know-how and experience on the big day. A bit like Leeds were sort of a decade ago. They just know how to win these games. They got the experience. They've got the know-how that they used to go in there and winning games like this. And I think it'll be very, very difficult to beat them in a grand final. They've not conceded a try in either of the last two, remember. I'm just not sure that Hull KR are going to score enough points to win the game. I could see it being, I think it would be a fairly low scoring game, but I think that Wigan will come out on top. I mean, I hope Hull KR win. Cards on the table, because A, it'd be nice to see a Yorkshire team win it, and B, we've not had a new winner since 2004 when Leeds won it. Leeds were the last new team to win the Super League title. When you think that they've won 8 grand finals, it's been far too long since we had a new name on the trophy. So I hope Hull KR win it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, Bevan French, without fail, always turns up in the big games as well. I've seen it this season as well. I mean, look at Vegas, for example. Sam B, that's a. I mean, he scored the try in the last grand final as well. Sam B, it's going to be a key for Wigan, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that puts the pressure on Mikey Lewis. Wigan have got that talisman that can do it for him. Hull KR need Mikey Lewis to step up. I think he performed quite well against Saints, but he'll have to take it that one step further if Hull KR are to get the win on next Saturday.
Do you think there are still question marks over him as a big game player?
I think so. Yeah. I think there's not been enough games for me that Lewis has stepped up in. I know he's still only young in his career, but I mean, he's been around about 5 years now. But yeah, I think there's not been enough times where he's shown that class, and we know that he is class. It's just doing it when it matters most.
I think that's a valid point. I still question marks about his big game mentality. I mean, just look at last year's grand final, for example. He had a poor game, and Bevan French ran straight through him. You know full well Wigan are going to try and pick on him defensively. Even on Saturday, he missed a tackle that led to Dion Cross's try. I think whether Mikey Lewis turns up or not, it could be the key factor for Rovers.
It'd be good to see him have a big game, wouldn't it? Just from an England point of view as well, and go out and show that he can do it on the big stage with the Ashes coming up in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, I think there are question marks over him. I don't think there are question marks over his ability, but there are over, like you say, his big game mentality and his temperament. So it's a really big one for him personally. But Bevan French on the opposite side has Super League seen many better players than Bevan French over the years. Not sure there's been too many better than him. He's so important and so influential, and he always rises to the big occasion. So he's sort of the ace in the side for Wigan without a doubt.
Yeah, Sam C, then is this a game that's settled by star players?
I think so. I think also it's settled by kicking game. I think Harry Smith's caught for some reason. Harry Smith was getting some slander on social media on Friday night, and I thought there was the one pass, and I think it looks like he's going to Walters, and he misses it, and he kicks out on the full. There was that moment of panic maybe skewed people's opinions, but I thought Harry Smith's kicking game was unbelievable, especially after Wigan obviously then he pins Leigh in that first half, which is why they're constantly playing out of their half, and kind of Wigan can capitalise. And then in the second half, when they got the lead, I don't think they were ever going to lose it with Harry Smith, and I think that's something that Hull KR maybe don't have as well, have quite as much. Jeslett and Mikey Lewis and even Tyrone May, they all kind of share the kicking duties. But I think their kicking needs to be near perfect. And I think so that comes down to all three of those key players, because I think Wigan will match you defensively, and they don't panic. We referenced a couple of weeks ago, Leeds kind of were like trying to force things. Wigan will just wait. They'll know that you're going to make a mistake. They'll know that they can force a mistake. Liam Farrell forces that mistake on Bailey Hodgson. Harry Smith's kick forces Edwin Apape to have his moment where he runs across the line of Bevan French, and then obviously they get the penalty and then they score from the kick-off on that one. Wigan will force you to make mistakes. So they don't need to chase a game. Hull KR need to then counter that by controlling it with a kicking game, with that fast ruck speed that they get from Lytton as well. And I think it comes down to your big men like Lytton, Lewis, May, even like Minchella in the pack, just orchestrating little things as well. I think Hull KR need to be near perfect, whereas I think Wigan can kind of just wait on Field or French, unless obviously we see what we've just said and Mikey Lewis has his sort of breakout big game, in which case then it's anyone's to play for.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well that Rovers, I mean, history will remember Hull KR won the Challenge Cup final, but it wasn't a good performance by Rovers, and a better team on that day would have beaten Hull KR. So again, the pressure's on them to handle that and respond.
Who do you think is more? Is it more pressure to go and get a treble, or is it more pressure to go and get a three-peat? It's got to be Hull KR, right, hasn't it? Because people are asking the questions about Hull KR.
I think the pressure's on Hull KR. Yeah, and
Even
look, they're
though
going
we're
in
going
as
to
the leaders.
weird.
Yeah. Come on then. Cards on the table. Predictions. I'll go Wigan by 10. I think it's going to be quite a comfortable night for them.
I'll go Wigan sort of 14-8, 14-10. I think it's a sort of 3-2 try game, in my opinion.
Oh, right. Then, well, I think... All right, I'm going to go 9-2 to Wigan.
Repeat.
Same as last year.
All right, no, I'll make it 11.
Yeah.
Make it 11. 11-2 then. But I don't think
we're going to
it'll be high scoring.
Yeah, I think Wigan are too strong. I'll go Wigan by 1. I'll make it interesting.
Yeah. Right. From one grand final to another, then just want to touch on the women's grand final from last night. Sam, you watched that? Give us a rundown of what happened.
Yeah, again, Wigan showed the class as they have done all season. I think Saints definitely learned from that Challenge Cup final where they were beaten well. Only losing by 4 points showed that they were still in the game. I think it was a late try, kind of. But yeah, I mean, Wigan just capped off their successful season. And I know I kind of gave Saints a bit of criticism last week, but it still has been a decent season for them. They've just had that challenging Wigan that they haven't had before. And it's just, there's another big name on the table now.
All right, that will do us. Thanks for joining us. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, that would be much appreciated. If you are going to the grand final, hope you have a fantastic time. I hear tickets are flying out. We'll be there. Obviously, we'll be building up to it all this week. Pete won't be for obvious reasons, but yeah, if you are going, hope you have a fantastic time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be here next Monday to dissect the grand final. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Please like and share, and we'll see you next week.